This lesson is on proportions, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down into three different parts. In this first part, I'm just going to focus on the ratios. So what is a ratio to start off with? It's not really nothing more than the comparison of two quantities. And what I've done then is I just gave you an example of three different ways that we can write it. You see, we can write this as A to B. That's how you'd read it. It's pretty straightforward. The second one, this is also read as A to B, but using the colon. And then the last one, a fraction, is a ratio as well, and we could read this again as A to B as well. So three different ways to look at your ratios. And the A and the B in these examples, throw numbers in there, and then they're going to look more like ratios that you've probably been used to seeing. Now here I have an example of students in a school, and what this one tells us is we have 520 students that are in sports. The number of students in the school is 1,850, and we want to find the athlete to student ratio to the nearest tenth. Now, what we need to do then is, or what I would recommend is, notice it says athlete to student. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to look at my number of athletes. There are 520 students, or 520 athletes, but we know there are 1,850 in the school. Well, I'm going to write my ratio as a fraction of 520 over my 1,850. Now it's going to be a matter of grabbing my calculator and typing that in. Now when I type this into my calculator, I get approximately 0.28. The last thing I want to do is read my directions. It says it wants this ratio rounded to the nearest tenth. Well, being that's at 0.28, that's going to tell me I'm going to need to round it to 0.3. So here's another way to write a ratio as a decimal, and in this case, round it to the nearest tenth. Now my next example, kind of the same numbers from last time, still 520 athletes, I guess we would say, and 1,850 students in the school. Now this time I want to find the athlete to non-athlete ratio, and it wants it as a simplified ratio. So again, I'm going to go, I need to know my athlete to my non-athlete. And I'm going to have my fraction again. So my athletes are going to be in the numerator, my non-athletes are going to be in the denominator. The athletes, that one's pretty straightforward. It's right here. It's the 520. It tells that to us. Now we have to figure out how many non-athletes are in this school. Well, this is where I can start with my 1,850 students that are in school. If I eliminate all of the athletes by subtracting them, it should give me how many non-athletes are in the school. When I do that, I'm going to end up with 1,330 non-athletes. I can write that in the denominator of my fraction, and now I need to simplify my fraction. First thing I notice in these, both are divisible by 10. If I do that, I end up with 52 over 133. Now I look at those, and 52 and 133 have no common factors. I have my simplified ratio right here of athlete in the numerator to non-athlete in the denominator. And I'm going to stop there dealing with just the ratio part of proportions.